Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Improving Your Budgeting and Forecasting with Dynamics GP. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will answer questions throughout the presentation, and we'll also answer questions after the presentation as well. I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Terry Ginley, our Director of Analytics, and Judson Parsons, who is a consultant here at Associates. So at this point, Terry, I believe we're ready to transition over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Lindsay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on this webinar today to learn a little bit more about some of the budgeting, forecasting options that are out there, and we'll go through some different areas of some solutions. Kind of quick agenda. We're going to do a vocabulary lesson on the front end here, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. As everybody knows, there's lots of acronyms in our industry, so I'll make sure we kind of get those up front. We'll talk about some of the myths of budgeting. We'll talk about some of the problems that we see our clients running into with an Excel-based budgeting solution in many cases. At that point, we'll jump over to some of the current challenges people have, and then we'll dive right into some available solutions. I'm glad that Judson's able to join us today. He is a CPM consultant and solution architect, and helps us implement and find the best solutions for our clients in budgeting, forecasting, and financial reporting. At the end, we will have time for questions, so please raise your hand or type those in the chat, and we will get to those as best we can. So the first thing I want to talk about was kind of an associate's view of analytics and CPM. CPM, we haven't done the vocabulary test yet, so that's corporate performance management. So think of analytics as more financial, or sorry, as non-financial kind of data operational. And associates, we work with that, but we also work with corporate performance management. So think of that as more financials, budget, and bringing some of those operational data. So kind of pulling that entire view of your organization together. And really, it needs to be much more than reporting. We all get monthly reports, look at a payables aging, trial balances, financial statements. But really, how do we analyze and drill down and really ask questions? Really want to do is more of a forward-looking. Judson will talk about some of the forecasting capabilities. Quit looking in the rearview mirror and try to decide, where is my organization going to go, and how do I react ahead of time? Our best clients, we're able to work with them, are really kind of help create a culture of a learning organization. It's not just pulling the data together. It's how do they say, well, what if we did this store just like this one in this industry in another city? Would that one be good, or would it not be a good fit there? So kind of that kind of questioning model. I'll give an example here in just a moment about actionable data. There should be basically be able to take action from it, not just, hey, what happened, but what am I going to do next month? And I'll sprinkle in some of our clients' stories of where we've been able to help make impacts on their business to kind of show you through a few of those. We'll talk about rapid and self-service. Judson will show you some kind of nice, neat areas that you can kind of, give power to the end users, not just coming from an IT or an accounting office. People can answer their own questions. And as always, right time, mobile. No one wants to read a financial statement on your mobile device, but you might want to get 2 or 3 key things before you go into a customer to know what they've ordered over the last 6 months. That's the right time and the right place for data. So that's our view of Associates Analytics, and we'll go next. So you're probably seeing a slide here of a car wash. So a project that I was involved with a number of years ago was really wasn't a real high-tech solution. Really what we did was we basically, on a mobile device, we were able to track 3 things. Weather, again, so we could do staffing, so we had just kind of pulled in some weather data. That sounds real simple. We pulled in sales by hour, so what the revenue was, how much we collected at the car wash. And then we calculated by hours how many gallons of water were used in each of the car washes we had. And so what we were trying to solve there very quickly, again, being actionable, being mobile, if for some reason basically you were using too many gallons of water for not enough revenue or cash in the drawer or credit card machine could be two things. Could be having damaged equipment, having to rewash cars, having to send them back through again. The other example we ran into where in a cash business, there's always that risk of someone taking the cash, running the car through, and literally in those cases, those were addressed within hours, not days or months later. So again, just giving our example of what we help the client come up with actionable data. So I always throw it out to our clients. Think about what those things are. What would you want to know in your business? So quick vocabulary listing here. We're talking about the planning process, the idea of setting your goals, budgeting us to the next level where you're kind of laying out that plan of where it's going to go. And then forecasting, I think it was the third, is actually, where is the entity actually heading, and potentially what would other impacts make it go different directions. So kind of three different ways, and the solutions that we're going to talk about today, most of those actually handle those three, and we'll kind of give you some examples of those. I mentioned earlier corporate performance management. Business performance management is a little bit different. Think of that more towards the business drivers or reporting or analytics. You hear that term, but so you do hear that a lot. The term that's getting very popular now is there's actually an accreditation in this area for financial planning and analysis. So FP&A, you'll even see in organizations people with the title of director of FP&A, vice president of FP&A. So really people that are dedicated, not on operational reporting, but they're more dedicated on budgeting. Basically the first three definitions up top there is what they spend a lot of time. ERP, we've used that acronym for years, for referring to accounting or business systems. And then the other one is what we do is extract, transform, and load data. A lot of these solutions will pull the data from your ERP system automatically and load right into a budgeting application. So, and then obviously the one below, budgeting, planning, and forecasting, very simple to FP&A. So hopefully I haven't bored too many people with our vocabulary, and we'll move on to the next areas. So here's some common myths of budgeting. People, obviously, everybody in the organization I know loves the budgeting process. I heard another one the other day was a button that I saw that said, I love month end, which typically is not the case for people with accounting backgrounds like myself, but we know it's an important part of the business. The second one, Excel does support 155 tabs. About a year ago, we recently had a client had 155 tabs in Excel. I was surprised it even opened up, but just hard to manage, hard to work with that data. If you can imagine all the links that had to be checked, etc. Just not a reliable way to be going through a budgeting process. And we all know that users never insert rows and columns, even though you ask them to, even though you lock them out, somehow they find a way to do it, and then values can be changed. The next one is, if your organizations, when you're going through the budgeting process, lengthy email threads that say, hey, listen, for next year, only 12% of revenues can be sent to marketing. Well, I want 11 for this division. You could have hundreds of emails flowing around with spreadsheets. That's not a very effective workflow. We'll talk about different ways to control that with a budgeting solution. The next one that we always run into, some of the legacy systems like Hyperion and others, if I'm sure other people on the phone have worked with different solutions. They're simple to use, and clearly they've not. The great thing about them in the last 5 years, a lot of these solutions are very intuitive, and you're going to be able to see just one example of that today with Judson. So some of the problems that define the problems that we run into. Basically, consolidating mobile Excel workbooks, whether it's workbooks or tabs in a workbook, it's just not a reliable way. One thing is, hey, who, what, and why changed it? Why did my budget get changed? 2 months into the year, I'm like, that's not what I put in. I want to see what the case is. Maybe it was overridden. Maybe it was just an error. Maybe somebody, stepped on my spreadsheet. So hopefully people are nodding their heads on a few of these and seeing, that these are, things that they run into, and hopefully we can help you define solutions to overcome those. Separation of church and state. There was a comment was made. Somebody used that in one of our clients. They really wanted to have the contributors of the data and then the approvers of the data. Sometimes that's good to have that separated because in workflows, it's a good idea to keep those things in two different silos. Ownership of different business units. whether it's legal ownership, different entities, percentage owners, or even just your organization, making sure those are defined into silos so that they can see their views, but they're not getting bothered with 15 other departments in the organization. Some real-time analysis while doing your budgeting. You'll see some examples where I want to change a number, see the value, boom, rolls through all my models. Look, then I've got my solution. And also, we're going to talk about some of the numbers don't speak for themselves, where you can actually tell stories and annotations inside these budgeting models. So you can actually go in there and have the data, literally speak for itself. Why did I only allow 12% for marketing? Well, that's just a general rule. You can go as high as 15. Annotating that in the cell, not a separate email, is a good way to do that. And really what we're trying to do is get from the left side over here, where we're really trying to become, not just where we're processing data, pulling together, they call it transaction management. I think it's kind of a nice term for saying we're just crunching the numbers, and really trying to take, all of our roles where we're really looking at more data-driven performance and analysis of the data. And again, pulling together the processes, the people in the solution, and the silos of data, and really trying to get to the far right to where strategic data-driven decisions, where leadership of the organization is looking at your team to say, where should we be heading? Here's where we've gone. Here's where we want to go. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the solutions we're going to talk about here. And again, this is targeted mostly for largely for our GP customers. If there are other ERP customers in here, I'll say that the first or the bottom three work with virtually any ERP system. The first two are actually part of GP, but we didn't want to leave those out because those are just two options that are simple ones, but definitely available today. And we'll go through each of these solutions that Socius works with. So in 2016, a number of our clients have made the transformation from Excel budgeting and forecasting and financial reporting to a CPM solution. I think there was 14 in 2016 moved to one of those three solutions that are out there, and I think the split was like, if I remember right, it was like 4, 5, and 5. So it was almost an even mix. And that's one of the things that we do at Socius. We don't just work with one solution because we understand that the best of breed for your industry might be different. And that's where you'll hear me talk about in a moment. Engage us early. We could help you look at these solutions from our background. I've been working with these solutions for, in this space for 20 years, as well as our team as well. And we can basically go through and say, yep, I look at this one. I might look at these three. We can kind of help you in that decision process. And sometimes it's not even one that's on here we're showing today. Might be a good fit, and we'll be happy to have a look at those solutions. So the first one we'll talk about is in GP. As most people probably know, you can do, put your GP budget in there, just like you have actual numbers. There's a bucket or an account or codes that you can put in for your budgets each year. The nice thing is there's no cost. It's a matter of just importing those budgets or setting them up in GP. And then when you use things like Management Reporter, you can actually report against those values and see actual to budget. Very limited, not a lot of workflows or very little to no workflows, not anything like the three that you're going to see at the end here. But again, just making people aware you can do that if you're not doing that today. It doesn't have to all live in Excel. Here's just an example of kind of what you would see, your different budget buckets in a GP format. And so the next one we'll talk about is Microsoft Forecaster. I started working with that solution in year 2000 as part of an acquisition we did while I was at Microsoft. Good solution for its day. You notice there the cost. I put the word was in there, I updated the slide. It used to be included in the GP extended pack. They have, and you'll see a slide in a minute here, they'll talk about the current status of it. So many people got it for free. Some people did purchase it early on. If you have it, there's nothing wrong with the solution. It's definitely more of a robust than what's in GP, but it's definitely an older solution. That at the time was the best in the market. You can do collaboration, version controls, audit trail of changes, does a good job, does the most common revenue and expense and human resource and CapEx planning, has modules just for those. Pretty short implementation cycle. We used to do a lot of them in 2 to 4 weeks. Again, not the most robust tool, but much better than what was in GP, and definitely much better than what's in Excel. So the one thing I will mention here, there's basically this, you can basically see a forecaster screen. You can see how, you know, the grade cells out, you can enter budgets, or you can enter the white ones, you get numbers in, the grade out, you can't. So it has controls, security, you know, basically you can do calculations here. And the nice thing about this grid is you can lock it versus Excel, which is a little harder to lock. Here, the administrator can only have people contribute what they want in the solution. So Forecaster, Microsoft announced about a year, I think it was back in about 2016, about a year and a half ago, that there was basically going to be, Forecaster would be end of life and would only be work with versions of GP less than GP 2016. So we started 5 years before that, actually, you know, working with future solutions, because we were seeing that the investment wasn't being there. That's when we started looking at Adaptive, De facto, and BI 360. But on the other hand, there's no reason you can't use it. It's basically going to support those current versions of GP for life cycles through 2021. So if you're using it today, you know, we can help you with it. We can also work with you to compare what you're using in it and maybe which one might be a best path over the next 6 months to 3 years to potentially move to. So now I'm going to hop into the 3 of the prime CPM solutions that we work with, and I'll give just a quick overview of those, and then I'm going to have Judson actually go in and just show one of them. The whole idea is we're not focusing on a product here today. We really want to just give you an idea of what each of these solutions do. So Adaptive solution, the one where it differentiates itself is it's 100% cloud. So you log in any browser that you have, iPad, and all security, all access to your data is done via the cloud going forward. It's purpose-built for budgeting and planning. Does financial reporting, forecasts, consolidations, multi-currency. Does a strong job of one version of the truth, because in the data model, even though you could bring in multiple data sources, you basically have one version of that data all in one data model. So also it's very good at driving data-driven decisions. You'll see a little bit, I believe Judson's going to show Adaptive here today. So we'll see a little bit of that. And also we'll show just a little bit about some integrated dashboards. So not just dashboards that may be done in Excel like you've done today, or in another tool like Power BI or Tableau, but this is actually integrated right into the solution. The next solution we'll talk about here today is BI 360 from Solver. Basically, it's a complete suite is one of the things I like about it. It's reporting, budgeting, dashboard, and a pre-configured data warehouse. So some of our clients, you know, if they want to pull in, for example, we have a trucking company that pulls in logistics data. So they bring in all the routes run, ships, miles driven, and then mix that in to do some of their forecasting for next year's for what the revenue is. So, and again, the other ones can do it. They just have a very strong data warehouse approach. You can also do live reporting right from GP. So just like you would with Managed Report or FRX, you can actually just click on it and it'll live right against the database. So that's a very nice feature. Also, you can do Excel and web-based reporting. So you have the option of both. Fully integrated dashboards, they do have, it's a little bit different than Adaptives, but you know, I like them a lot as well. And you can pull the data from your ERP, from your budgets. And also, I could probably pull some of that shipping and trucking data from my example earlier. I could pull that into the to the dashboards as well. And next one, talk about is solutions for it's called De facto. De facto's been around about I believe about 11 years, and some of the nice things that it's one unified product. One of the things that really stands out to me, I mentioned a couple times in this slide, is the predictive capability. They work real well with the Power BI teams and the Microsoft Business Intelligence teams where I came from originally. They did a good job with those people where they're actually taking forecasting based on the last 3 years of actuals, this year's 6-month budget, for example, and let's maybe try to predict where we think these revenues are going to go for this product line, or based on some other drivers in the business. So very kind of forward thinking. The nice thing about the product, it's Excel. The nice thing is it's not just Excel with all those problems I mentioned earlier. It's basically Excel with a lot of built-in database security, not Excel security, but actually a database that's actually protecting and holding those numbers. So I mentioned earlier the predictive analytics and working with Power BI. They do have budgeting, dashboarding. The dashboarding solution in this case is Power BI. That's another tool, dashboarding solution that here at Socius we do a lot of work with, and for our customers to do operational dashboards. They've embedded that right into there. They've created pre-built connectors, and for this case, it is for Dynamic CRM, Salesforce, and GP, that'll cover probably most of the people on the call today. And basically, it does a very good job in high volume places so we go into a client that really has millions of records per month, or tens of millions. Some of the SQL and the relational and the cube technology is important for high performance. So hopefully I'll give you an idea of just some of the different characteristics. And these are the kinds of things that we'll work with you on to understand very quickly, which direction should you possibly look. We'll also talk a little bit about what these solutions typically cost, because we know we have so many resources and dollars and budgets. Myself and Judson are actually in the middle of about 4 or 5 of those right now, some of those analysis for our clients. So basically they can put in their budget for the 2018 budget, what the budgeting software would cost. So it's kind of interesting analogy there. But so basically looking at it saying, we're not ready to go today, but what would these types of solutions typically cost? So I'm going to let Judson demo here in a second in some areas that he's going to show, kind of a quick agenda. Talk about some of the hierarchies. Are people familiar with an MR, FRX, the rows, where they try the trees, different hierarchies? You'll show a little bit on that. Some workflows, some spread methods. I won't go through the whole list here, but some of the audit trail capabilities I mentioned, and then as well as show some of the dashboards. So with that, I will turn it over to Judson.
All right, thanks, Terry. Thanks for joining us, guys. As Terry mentioned, I am a CPM consultant solution architect, and today I wanted to show you Adaptive Insights. As Terry had mentioned earlier, it is 100% cloud-based software, and as you probably know now, everyone's pretty much aware of the cloud. Why that's important for you, it does give you the ability to access your budget, access your forecast, any sort of reports you have from anywhere on any device with an internet connection. There's no need for IT support to configure the instance. It's a really quick startup time. Hopefully you'll kind of see through the demo. Adaptive was actually created by a CEO or a CFO, excuse me, because he really believed that as the business world was evolving and the finance department needed to be more agile, and their ability to help the business make decisions, that you shouldn't have to go through IT to see the relevant information you needed to complete that job. And then, of course, with it being 100% cloud-based, there's no need to purchase servers, any sort of hardware, upgrade those servers, or even bog down your IT staff to manage those servers. So you'll see my screen here. I'm actually logged into Chrome. You can use any browser to access Adaptive. You just go to the Adaptive website, and you've got your login, your password, and you just log right into the instance. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. And one thing to note, I am logging in as an admin user, so all the options that you'll see, I have access to the full system, while maybe a department manager or one of your end users is not gonna have quite as much access to the full system. Has really strong security capabilities to allow them to only see not only the data that they need to see, but to give them the functions that they need to complete their tasks in the system. So what's opened up here, what I have my home page set to, is the process tracker. So Adaptive Insights really can do pretty much anything that Excel can do. It just has a lot of built-in features to help handle some of those headaches and those problems that Terry mentioned earlier, like the audit trail, workflow, being able to assign tasks to certain users. So you'll kind of see that as we go through the demo today. But I am on the process tracker screen, and you'll notice the process I'm looking at here is the budget process. I can have as many processes as I want. Maybe it's a quarterly forecast or some of my close processes here. And you'll notice on this budget process, I have my target date. So we're trying to complete the budget here on October 27th. And it just kind of gives me, from an admin perspective, a little bit of insight into the total budget process. So where are we at? We're 18% completed. 2 of the tasks have been completed. 3 of them are in progress, as you can see here, and then 6 of these tasks are actually running late. If I drill into one of these tasks, you'll see I can assign certain tasks to users. So my CFO here needed to finalize their CapEx spend, and they actually are running pretty late on this. So, maybe I wanted to send them a note to say, when can I expect this to be completed? I'll add the note there, and it's just a way to kind of drive collaboration on these tasks. I can add attachments to these if I needed to. Maybe there was an attachment I needed to be able to complete this. I can add in a description for what this task should do. Really just a kind of a way to monitor that and give you a little bit of insight as to where everyone's at versus a lot of people that we see are sending out Excel files and aren't really getting a lot of insight as to maybe where some of their department managers are in their budget process. So really this is just meant to give you a little bit more insight, as well as what you can do with the process tracker and the workflow. It actually gives you the ability to lock down budgets while they're being reviewed. And then of course, once they are approved. So really strong features with process tracker there. I'm gonna go ahead and navigate over to what Adaptive refers to as sheets, and you can really think of them just like an Excel sheet. I'm going to jump in. You'll notice I have a lot of different sheets here. As Terry had mentioned, Adaptive is data agnostic, so you'll notice I actually have some inventory metrics, some inventory sheets here, a sheet here that's looking at my CRM data. I have a sheet here that's for my capital planning, personnel planning, even office expenses. I'm going to go ahead and jump into this office expense sheet. And a few things I want to point out here. You'll notice that some of these options will kind of follow us as I go through the system. The first one being this drop down right here. So this is your version selector. You'll notice I have my actuals version up here. And then these are some of my planned versions or my budget versions. I've got a working budget here, my forecast, maybe some what if scenarios. I've got my last year's budget. I can have as many planned versions as I want, as well as I can quickly copy over versions, maybe to do some ad hoc what if scenarios, some different planning scenarios that I can show here in a little bit. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. You'll notice this will follow us through the system. The second one being the level selector here. So those that are familiar with Management Reporter and some of the trees, you'll notice this probably looks pretty familiar. This is really just the hierarchy of my organization, really kind of as it's outlined in the chart of accounts. So you'll notice I've got multiple companies here. As I expand through my companies, it goes into operations and corporate. I can expand into operations to see maybe different regions that I have set up. This is all custom to your business and is really what's hashed out and part of the implementation process in terms of the best way that you want to see your information. Security is largely driven through these levels. So my Sales North department right here, naturally only the manager for Sales North probably should see this information, and they shouldn't be able to see the information for Sales South. So I am on my working budget version here, and I'm on Sales North. You can see all my different office expenses here on the left side. Now this is just because I've only made this sheet to show the office expenses to make it easier for these managers to see this information. A couple things I want to point out here. You'll notice my equipment rental here, I've actually locked down this row. So if I wanted to go in here and try to type information, it's not going to allow me to do so. While these cells that are actually white, I can come in here and I can actually just type in a number if I want to, just a quick, easy way to insert data. A couple of other things to point out. You'll notice some of these cells have this red arrow up here in the top right corner. This is just a way to add notes to certain cells. And what's actually nice is these notes will actually roll through from the cells into any report that you're looking at this information for. So you'll see here that this note's a one-time building upgrade. I can see the vendor quote attachment if I wanted to look at this quote for the maintenance. You'll also notice that this cell, while it is unlocked, it has a purple triangle here in the bottom right corner, and this is actually driven by a formula. So if I go in and I'm going to right click and explore this cell, it's going to give me a little bit more information as to what's actually driving this. And you'll see that this telephone account is actually being driven by the FTE on my personnel sheet, and then I just have an assumption of what the telephone cost is per head. So you'll see it's the formula here is actually a little bit different than what Excel might be in terms of a location base where it's B4 times A5, right? This is actually showing me that I'm actually able to read this out to see this my FTE from my personnel sheet. So what was my FTE here for January 2018? It was actually 4.6. And then what's my assumption of my telephone cost per head? It's 40. So I'm able to see how that formula is actually being derived here, which is a nice feature of Cell Explorer. One thing I will point out, so this is my working budget. I will go ahead and jump into actuals and just kind of show you the same idea of how actuals works. And if I wanted to, I can actually jump into, let's go from Sales North and let's go ahead and look at a consolidated company view. So a couple things you'll notice here. All my actuals are already locked down, as well as you'll see that the text here is actually green. All that's signaling is that the data here that is in green text, it is actuals numbers. And then of course the version is locked. Last time I checked, I think best practices is not to allow you to be able to go in and change the actuals. This information is generally what we see with our clients. They actually are building integrations from their ERP systems, which I think most of the people on this webinar are probably Dynamics GP customers. So we actually are able to set up an integration. Most of them can run daily, hourly, they can run monthly. You can run them on demand. Really, it's really up to you. But you can run these integrations. It's actually just going to pull your actuals information directly into the system and allow you to use it for planning moving forward. One thing I'll point out as well with the Cell Explorer, so I am at the total company view for my actuals. I'm going to right click and go back into that Cell Explorer. And one of the headaches that Terry was mentioning that Adaptive tried to solve is really being that single source of the truth. So not having you go from Excel back into GP, back into maybe even another operational system if you're trying to find information and trying to reconcile certain items. So from the Cell Explorer, you'll notice I'm at my total company view. This maintenance account is $10,000 and for March 2017, and I can see actually where all this is coming from. So I've got my company structure here. You'll notice that some of these actually have different currencies, but I can drill in, let's say, to company A. I can drill in even further through my operations or to corporate levels. Let's go into operations. You'll notice the breakdown here between the different regions in these departments. And then the department breakdown here, I can go into Sales North all the way down to this granular level of detail. I can actually go in a little bit further than this, which really a lot of clients like. You'll notice I have this drill into transactions button right here. So I'm going to go ahead and drill into transactions. And so now I can actually see for that Sales North department, what are the transactions that are actually making up that value here. So it's just a way for an end user, department manager, whoever they might be, to actually go in and say, okay, so why was that amount 1,700? And they can actually drill right into the transactions here without having to log into GP or log into their ERP system or any other source system for that matter. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the working budget. I just want to show off some of the features for importing budget data, for manually typing it in, whatever's best for your company in terms of how you do your budget process. So if I go back down, I'm going to go back to the Sales North department. And you'll see I now can type in some of my information. We have a lot of clients that say, okay, so what if during my budget process there was an easy way to see what my actuals were for last year? Adaptive makes it very easy for you to see that. I'll go into my display options here. And let's do a version comparison. And let's compare the actuals version. We'll want to look at 2017 actuals, and I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Oops, I selected the wrong year. And so now I'm actually able to see, you'll notice I've got two different columns here, actuals and my working budget. And so now I can actually see side by side what my actuals were for maybe a prior year, maybe even a current year. And I can actually it's an easy way to do reforecasting. It's an easy way to fill in my budget information and actually see my actuals information right there beside it. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that version comparison, and we'll talk about a couple of different ways that you can import or input your budget information. So let's say I'm on my working budget, and let's say I wanted to take this 15,000 number that I'm budgeting, and maybe I wanted to say maybe for this year I'm looking at 20,000. So I'll just put in 20,000 for the year. And you notice now I've got this breakback roll-up value window that's opened. So there's a couple different ways that I can break back this information. Maybe I want to break it back proportionally. Maybe I want to break it back proportionally using my actuals for the prior year to be able to capture seasonality of my business. A couple different spread methods here that are a little bit more common, 445, 454, as well as I can build custom breakback methods if I want in terms of maybe business days per month. Again, I've got a revenue of a current year, maybe expenses of a prior year. If office supplies were tied to one of those items, I could have as many of these custom assumptions as I want, custom breakback methods. Let's just go ahead and break it back proportionally. And you'll notice it's actually going to all roll back this information. There's a blue text here because it actually hasn't saved and committed that information to the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and save it now. And you'll notice now it's been saved. One of the issues that Terry had brought up is the ability to see an audit trail of this information. So I'm going to go right back in. I'm going to right click, go into Cell Explorer. And you'll see there's another option here for view the audit trail. Two ways that I could see this. I can actually run a report, and I could set maybe a time range where I say, show me all the things that were changed last week. I could do it that way and run a report, and it's going to show me everything. Or I could go into an actual cell and say, show me what's changed for this particular cell. So you'll notice there's a timestamp here for what was changed, who was the user that actually changed it. I'm the financial analyst, so I've made all the changes in the cell. And it's actually going to show you the old and new values. So you'll see it's actually tracking the changes all the way from April all the way into October, all the changes that has been made here for this particular cell. So that's one of the standard sheets of Adaptive. There's a lot of different ways that you can model your business. If I jump into personnel real quick, just want to kind of give you a different flavor for what some of the different sheets might look like. This is going to be a modeled sheet. Really common way to budget your employees, forecast for your employees. You'll notice I've got some current hires here. Maybe I'm even forecasting or budgeting for a couple new hires. You'll notice William Clark, there's actually two gray cells here that's split. And here, if you go look all the way over here, you'll see the levels here. He's actually 40% allocated to sales south and 60% allocated to sales north. So just a quick way to allocate this employee's expenses to a particular department, particular level, excuse me. If I right click and go into row details, you can see here as I scroll over some different calculations that are happening throughout the year, right? So his actual salary for the month, his bonus, commission, salary, his head count for that particular department, how that translates to his FTE, maybe some different benefits, his Medicare, Social Security, different taxes here. You'll see how it's calculating here in this model, and then rolling through. So to demonstrate how that rolls through, kind of in a real-time format, I'm actually going to add a row. You'll notice I've got my version selector here on my working budget. I've got my sales north organization here. I'm going to add a row real quick. This information, of course, can be imported from ADP, any sort of HR system that you currently have. But just kind of wanted to show off how this information rolls through your model. So I'll go through, I'll make some selections here. All of these columns here are specific to your business. So if you're doing, maybe you're just calculating health benefits as a 15% of salary. Maybe you're not actually selecting an individual plan. You know, that's possible. This is all customized to you. But let's say, you know, we're hiring a CEO here, and the CEO is going to be pretty expensive. $2 million. It's a pretty expensive CEO. I'm going to save this information. First, I'm going to allocate it across. Copy forward. Let's copy that all the way to the end, and let's save it. And then I want to jump into my P&L sheet, my income statement sheet that's showing some of that information. And you'll notice here I've got my 6,000 salary and wages account. And I'm going to use Cell Explorer to actually see what's driving this information. You'll notice there is a purple arrow here in the bottom right corner. And if I look in the formula bar here, it's looking at the personnel sheet, and it's looking at my salary account on that personnel sheet. So if I right click, let's explore the cell. Here's my formula. Here's the number. I'm going to click into that number. And now I can actually see what this almost $200,000 number is. And so here's our employees. And then as you'll notice here, here's that CEO we just added. He's got a pretty expensive salary. That's driving a lot of that expense here. And then if I wanted to, I can actually explore this. You'll notice, where is this information being generated at? Here's a little bit additional information, right? He's in New York. What's his title? He's the CEO. What's his health benefits plan? But I can actually just go right back into that sheet by clicking this link here. And let's say, okay, you know what? I don't really think that we should hire the CEO. I'm just going to delete the row. Let's save it. And then I'm going to go back here to my P&L sheet. I'm just going to refresh this. And you'll notice now that my salary and wages have gone back down. So just kind of a way to show off how different sheets are all connected to each other, and kind of how you're able to make changes in certain areas of your model, and it's all going to roll through and hit your GL accounts and allow you to budget properly. So we're running short on time. Let's see if I can go ahead. I'm going to jump into let's see. I'm going to go ahead and jump into dashboards so we can save some time for questions. Lindsay, are there any questions right now?
There's only one, and it has to do with what you're talking about. So I'll just ask it for you. Can user input be entered via a formula?
It can. So just if to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly, is it going to be you have one, if you have one input, and maybe there's a certain account is driven off of a formula and that input, you can certainly do that if I'm understanding the question correctly. If not, if you want to provide a little bit more clarification, I'd be happy to answer that as well.
Okay, I'll see if more clarification comes in. If not, we can reach out after.
Okay, great. So within Adaptive, there is the ability to do reporting. Of course, I want to actually show really quickly how easy it is to do a what if scenario. So I'm going to go into this modeling section here of the system. And again, this is very much an admin type function. You wouldn't be giving your end users the ability to do this. I'm going to go into my versions. And I want to take my working budget, and what I want to do is I actually want to copy this working budget into a test version. So let's call it working budget what if. And let's say, I only want this available to my admins. I don't want my users to see this, so I can just hide this version from them. I'll keep going down, and I want to start this copy as a working budget. I want to copy all my data. I want to copy all my model rows, all that personnel information we just looked at, any sheet and workflow notes. I want to copy all that information over. So let's go ahead and save this. I also want to do this. I want to add this report parameter choice to all reports. So if I have reports that I've already created, maybe it's a report that I'm looking at daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, I want to be able to look at this information for this new version that I've created. So I'm going to save this. And it'll just take a second to copy all that data over into a new version. So it's copied all my data over, and let's go ahead and just jump right back into that office expense sheet. And if I change my version selector here, here's my new version I just created. When I change this, you'll notice, I copied all my data over, so everything's going to be the same. But let's say I just wanted to do some what if scenarios. So maybe I wanted to say, if I adjust this 20,000 number, what if I increase this by 12%? Let's just apply that, and it'll do that for me. Maybe I wanted to adjust this number to increment by a particular value. So maybe it's going to be increasing by 10,000. And then maybe I just wanted to do a couple manual inputs here if I wanted to, just kind of show you different ways to change some of your information. So I am on that new budget. Let's save it. And then let's jump into a report and kind of show you how quickly you can do some ad hoc what if scenarios and be able to report on that. I'm going to jump into one of these reports that I've created here, my P&L version variance. And jump into my parameters. I have a lot of parameters on this report that I can quickly change. So the two different versions I want to compare, my working budget, and I want to compare that working budget what if that I just created. I'm looking right now I'm looking at the total company view. Maybe if I just wanted to look at that sales north, I could do so. Let's just go ahead and run the report. And then just a quick, easy way to kind of see here, our revenue stayed the same, our cost of goods sold stayed the same. I didn't change anything that was changing those numbers. But if I go down into my office expenses here, you'll notice pretty quick and pretty easily, based off these conditional formattings, I have the highlighting here and then these zones right here that I've added, what's changed. And it was just those office expense accounts that I've changed. Between my different versions, you'll notice here the cell notes have actually copied over onto the report. I've got my variance here, and then it's just really easy to point out what these variances are. Just one of the ways to kind of see that information and see that data, and hopefully kind of shows you how easy it is to do some what if, some ad hoc what if analysis a way that you can do your forecasting, kind of the same idea. So this is one of the ways to see your information. Adaptive also it's very visual and it's very strong in your ability to see information visually. So if I jump back onto this sheet real quick, I'll just kind of show you an example of that. Let's say I wanted a chart of this information for 2018 information. I'll just highlight this information. I'm going to hit this chart button right here, and an unexpected error has occurred. Well, that's not good. Let's see if I can refresh this. Let's try that one more time. I think it might be my version. Let me see if I can change my version here. There we go. So I just highlighted that information. I hit the chart button. Here's a chart just comparing from January 2018 to December 8, 2018, all my office expenses. Just a quick way to see that chart. I could save it if I wanted to. Maybe I wanted to just look at it for the year. I can quickly change that information. Maybe I want to show you real quickly one of the second ways that you can see your information visually, and that's through dashboards. So I've taken this chart and I just want to save it to, it says discovery here, that's Adaptive's word for dashboards. So let's just quickly save this. I can select which dashboard I want to save it to. I'm going to save it to the ad hoc. I'll move it over here on the dashboard and let's just call this office expense comparison. I'm going to save it. And then let's take a look at the dashboards quickly. So this is just kind of giving you a flavor, some of the different dashboards that you can have. What's really nice about this is that there's multiple layers of information that's just naturally stored in Adaptive in terms of the way that we input the data. So if I look at revenue just as an example, all these numbers can be clicked through. As you notice, they kind of highlight, so I'll click into revenue. Maybe I wanted to see what my revenue was by customer. So you'll see now a new chart's going to open and it's going to show me this revenue by customer. Maybe I wanted to look at my top customer and let's see what product he was buying the most of. And so now I can see the spread of all the products that he was buying. Maybe I could go in even further. I could see maybe the color of the particular products that they were buying the most of, or maybe the size. Maybe I wanted to see the organization, what part of the department was that customer buying the most from. And now I can see that it was all in company A was where they were buying from. So just a quick way, all the data is layered on itself naturally. There's no coding required to build these dashboards. It's all drag and drop, as you kind of saw with the ad hoc dashboard over here. You'll notice here's that office expense comparison dashboard that I just easily created. So it's pretty quick and easy, pretty seamless to build these dashboards. But you can see, production data. If this is attached to some sort of operational system I have, I can build a dashboard off that information. I had mentioned CRM earlier. Here's some CRM information, some weighted forecasts maybe that's helping me drive revenue and budget my revenue. Really, the options are endless in terms of the data that you can have in Adaptive and the ways that you can report off of it. So that's really all I have. I know it was really short. It's hard to demonstrate a system like this in a short amount of time. But if you're interested in something like this, we'd be more than happy to give you an in-depth demo and a little bit more of a personalized demonstration for how it might work with your business. Are there any additional questions, Lindsay?
Yes. Are reports capable of showing expenses and operating margins as a % of revenue?
Yes, they are. That would just be the way that you set up maybe a particular metric if you're doing sort of metrics of expenses per revenue, as well as you can easily create your variances to be a certain percentage. But yes, you can.
Okay, and then Kelly has her hand raised. So Kelly, we will unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question. Okay, go ahead, Kelly. Okay, maybe not. Let's see. Yep, and there's no questions.
Yep. Great, Lindsay. This is Terry. Am my audio on?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, Judson, for kind of an overview just of one of the solutions. Just want to give you some flavor for what the different solutions do and some of the capabilities. The one thing I will mention here, just very quickly, is before we head to that, is that if you want to work with these different solutions or look at different solutions, definitely reach out to Socius. Reason being is that as far as some of them, actually those three that we mentioned, they would prefer that you come to us, we register you with their organization, explain to them what you might be looking at. The nice thing is we can look at it very much unbiased versus some of the vendors a little more specific, as well as we can show you, demonstrate it, and kind of point you in the right direction. So you'll see here in just a moment a slide that talks about next steps and some emails. We'll leave that on here. But I thought before we did that, one quick last item here. Lindsay, can you see my screen there talking about forecasting all year?
Yep, you're good.
So kind of an interesting stat from one of the, it's called Beyond Budgeting, which is a industry group that tracks compliance and budgeting and best practices. 64% of annual targets are obsolete after 4 to 6 months. So the whole idea of being able to have a tool that not just creates the budget, but reforecasts maybe once, twice, even monthly is important to stay ahead of a statistic like this. So Lindsay, I think you have some upcoming webinars that are highlighted here.
Yeah, just some upcoming webinars that we have. If you're interested, on Thursday, October 26th, we have new 1099 requirements and adherence with Dynamics GP from 1 to 2. And then on Tuesday, November 7th, we have streamline your quote to cash process using Dynamics GP. And then you can go to our website, www.socius1.com, and you'll be able to see the webinar program for the rest of the year. And with that, if there are no other questions, thanks everyone for joining us. And then here's some contact information for Terry and Socius in general if you have questions and want to learn anything further.
Thanks everyone for your time today, and thanks for attending.